the discovery the Corvani Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries. Their massive war fleet moved through space like hungry wolves, taking planets and enslaving species with ease. Admiral Kef stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching. The scanner displayed a small object floating in the dark void. "What is that thing?" he asked his second officer, Commander Rix. The scanner showed an old metal structure, no bigger than a small moon. It looked broken and dead, with rust covering its surface. Strange symbols marked its hull, symbols the Corvani had never seen before. "It appears to be some kind of space station, sir," Rix replied. "Very old, maybe 1,000 years or more." Admiral Keth walked closer to the viewing screen. A station looked harmless, just floating junk from some long-dead civilization. His empire had seen many such ruins during their conquest of the galaxy. "Any signs of life?" he asked. "No, sir. No power readings. No heat signatures. It's completely dead." The Admiral nodded. This was normal. When the Corvani took over Star Systems, they often found old stations and ships left behind by races that had died out long ago. Most were empty shells, picked clean by scavengers over the centuries. "Should we scan it for useful materials?" asked Rix. Keth shook his head. "Not worth our time. We have bigger targets ahead." But as the fleet prepared to move on, something caught the eye of Tech Officer Vox. He was young and curious, always studying the strange things they found in space. The symbols on the station's hull looked familiar somehow. "Sir," Vox called out, "I think I know what those markings are." Admiral Keth turned to him with mild interest. "Well?" "They match some old records we captured from the Zentari worlds. These symbols ... they belong to a species called humans." A name meant nothing to most of the crew. But Commander Rix remembered something from his military history lessons. "Humans," he said slowly. "Weren't they that small species from the outer rim?" "I thought they went extinct decades ago." "They did," Admiral Keth replied. "We destroyed their home world ... What was it called?" "Earth," said Vox, reading from his data pad. "But sir, if this station is human-made, it might be older than we thought. Our records show humans were surprisingly good at building things that lasted." The Admiral considered this for a moment. The Corvani Empire had crushed many species, but humans had been different. They had fought harder than most, using strange tactics and refusing to surrender even when defeat was certain. It had taken the Empire longer than expected to wipe them out. "Still," Keth said finally, "it's just an old wreck. Even if humans built it well, what could it possibly do to us now? They're all dead." Unknown to the Corvani, deep inside the station, ancient systems were quietly waking up. Sensors that had waited in the dark for 50 years began to scan the approaching fleet. Computer systems, built to last centuries, started running programs their creators had written long ago. The station had been waiting for ships just like these. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kef gave the order to continue toward their real target, a planet rich in rare metals that would fuel the Empire's war machine. The old human station wasn't worth a second thought. As the Corvani fleet moved past the station, they didn't notice the small dish that turned to track their movement. They didn't see the tiny antenna that began sending signals into deep space. And they certainly didn't detect the nearly invisible drones that quietly detached from the station's hull and began following them. The humans who built this station had learned much during their war with the Corvani. They had studied their enemies' ships, their tactics, their weaknesses. And when they knew Earth was doomed, they had prepared one final surprise. The station looked dead because it was meant to look dead. The rust was fake. The damage was carefully designed. Everything about it was built to be overlooked, ignored, forgotten. But inside its metal walls, systems built by the most clever human engineers were working perfectly, waiting for the right moment, waiting for a Corvani fleet to pass by and trigger the trap that Earth's children had spent their final years preparing. Admiral Keth stood on his bridge, confident in his power, unaware that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Behind him, the old station continued its silent work. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other systems began to wake up. The humans were gone, but their final gift to the galaxy was just beginning to unfold. The Silent Followers 3. Days passed as the Corvani fleet traveled toward their target planet. Admiral Keth felt pleased with their progress. Soon they would claim another world for the Empire, and his name would be added to the list of great conquerors. But Tech Officer Vox had been watching his instruments with growing worry. Small objects appeared on his long-range scanners then, vanished before he could get a clear reading. "Commander Rix," he called out during the night shift. "I'm picking up strange signals." Rix walked over to Vox's station, looking tired. "What kind of signals?" "Very weak. Almost like whispers in space. They come and go too fast to decode." The commander studied the data. "Probably just space debris or old satellite networks. The galaxy is full of junk from dead civilizations." But Vox wasn't satisfied. He had been thinking about the human station they had passed. Something about it bothered him, though he couldn't say what. Meanwhile, the invisible drones continued their work. Each one was no bigger than a person's hand, built with technology the humans had stolen and improved during their war with Thea. Corvani. They moved without engines, using gravity fields and solar winds to stay hidden. The drones were learning. They scanned every ship in the fleet, recording shield frequencies, weapon patterns, and communication codes. All this information flowed back to the old station through quantum signals too weak for Corvani. Sensors to detect dot on the fourth day, Admiral Keth received news that made him smile. Their target planet had no defenses worth mentioning. The local species had simple weapons and no space fleet. It would be an easy victory. "How long until we arrive?" he asked his navigator. 2 more days, sir," Keth nodded. "Prepare the invasion force. I want this planet taken quickly." But as the fleet prepared for battle, the human station was preparing too. Deep in its core, manufacturing systems that had waited decades began working again. Tiny robots moved through dark corridors, building weapons from stored materials. Station's main computer ran through its programming one more time. The humans who created it had been very clear about its mission. Wait for a large Corvani fleet, learn everything about their ships, then strike when they least expected it. On the 5th day, Vox made a discovery that chilled his blood. Wow. Checking old sensor logs, he found proof that objects had been following the fleet since they passed the human station. "Sir," he reported to Admiral Keth, "we're being tracked." The Admiral turned from his battle plans with annoyance. "Tracked? By whom? There are no enemy fleets in this sector." "I don't know, sir. But something has been following us for days. Very small objects, staying just out of scanner range." Commander Rix joined them at the sensor station. "Show me." Vox brought up his data on the main screen. Tiny blips appeared and disappeared like ghosts in the dark. "Could be sensor errors," Rix suggested, but his voice lacked confidence. Admiral Keth studied the patterns. His years of military experience told him this wasn't random. Something was definitely out there. "Double our sensor sweeps," he ordered, "and increase patrol flights around the fleet." But the drones were too smart to be caught so easily. When Corvani fighters swept the area, the small machines simply shut down and drifted like space dust. When the patrols passed, they came back. To life dot as the fleet drew closer to their target planet, the station's computer completed its analysis. It now knew everything about Corvani's ship designs, from their strongest battleships to their smallest fighters. More importantly, it had found their weaknesses. The humans had been good students during their war. They had learned that Corvani shields had a specific frequency gap. They had discovered that Corvani engines overheated when pushed too hard. And they had found that Corvani commanders always made the same tactical mistakes when surprised. Now the station was ready to use this knowledge. Late that night, as most of the Corvani crew slept, the station sent a different kind of signal into deep space. This one was stronger, designed to travel much farther than the whispers the drones had been sending. Across the galaxy, other human installations began to wake up. Some were hidden in asteroid fields. Others floated in the empty space between stars. A few had been built inside the ruins of dead worlds. All of them had been waiting for this signal. All of them had weapons designed specifically to kill Corvani ships. Admiral Keth stood on his bridge, unaware that his fleet was now completely mapped and studied. Tomorrow, they would reach their target planet. Tomorrow, they would discover that the humans had left them more than just an old space station. Tomorrow, the trap would spring shut. The awakening network, the Corvani fleet, arrived at their target planet just as the local sun began to rise. Admiral Keth stood ready to claim another easy victory for the Empire. The planet below looked peaceful, with simple cities and no orbital defenses. "Begin the invasion," he commanded. But as the first wave of Corvani ships moved toward the planet, something unexpected happened. Space around them suddenly filled with new contacts on the scanner. "Sir?" Tech Officer Vox shouted. Multiple objects appearing on all sides. Admiral Keth rushed to the scanner display. Dozens of contacts had materialized around his fleet, as if they had been invisible until this moment. Where did they come from? He demanded. "I don't know, sir. They just appeared." The objects were small compared to Corvani warships, but they moved with purpose. And they were broadcasting on frequencies that made Keth's blood run cold. "Those are human communication codes," Commander Rick said, his face pale. "But that's impossible. We destroyed them all." The truth was more terrifying than they could imagine. For 50 years, human engineers had prepared for this moment. They had built a network of hidden weapons platforms, each one designed to look like space junk or natural objects. Some were disguised as asteroids. Others hid inside the wreckage of old battles. All of them had been waiting for the signal from the station. The first human weapon to fire was a mass driver hidden in what looked like a broken freighter. It launched a chunk of metal at incredible speed, striking a Corvani destroyer before its shields could adapt. The destroyer exploded in a ball of fire and debris. "Return fire," Admiral Keth ordered. "All ships, engage the enemy." But the Corvani found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't understand. The human weapons knew exactly where to hit. They targeted the weak points in Corvani's shield systems, the vulnerable spots in their armor, the critical systems that would cause maximum damage. More ships died as the battle continued. Each human weapon platform fought with the knowledge of 50 years of preparation. They had studied every Corvani ship design, every tactical pattern, every weakness the Empire had. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count them," Commander Rix reported. "These weapons, they know our ships better than we do." Admiral Keth couldn't believe what he was seeing. His mighty fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was being torn apart by what looked like floating junk. "How is this possible?" he asked. "The humans are extinct." But Vox, still monitoring his sensors, had found something even more disturbing. "Sir, I'm detecting similar contacts throughout this entire sector of space. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands." The young officer was right. Across dozens of star systems, human weapons platforms were coming online. Some had waited in the cold, dark for decades. Others had hidden in plain sight, disguised as mining equipment or research stations. All of them began moving toward Corvani, positions throughout the galaxy. The humans had learned an important lesson during their war with the Empire. They couldn't win by fighting fair. The Corvani were too strong, too numerous, too well armed. But humans were clever, and they understood something the Empire had missed. A trap doesn't have to be bigger than its prey. It just has to be smarter. 4 years before Earth's fall, human engineers had scattered their weapons across the galaxy. They had made them look harmless, forgettable, not worth a second glance. And they had connected them all through a network of quantum signals that the Corvani couldn't detect. The old space station had been the key that unlocked this network. When a large enough Corvani fleet passed by, it would study them, learn their weaknesses, and then wake up every human weapon in the galaxy. "Sir," Vox reported, his voice shaking, "I'm receiving reports from across the Empire. Corvani fleets everywhere are under attack. These human weapons, they're everywhere." "Admiral." Keth felt the deck shake under his feet as another blast hit his flagship. Through the viewing screen, he could see his fleet dying around him. Ships that had terrorized 100 worlds were being destroyed by enemies they had thought extinct. "How many of our fleets are under attack?" he asked. "All of them, sir. Every major Corvani fleet in the galaxy is reporting the same thing. Human weapons appearing from nowhere, striking with impossible accuracy." The Admiral realized with growing horror what had happened. The humans hadn't just prepared a trap for his fleet. They had prepared a trap for the entire Corvani Empire. And 50 years after their extinction, they had finally sprung it. As his flagship shuddered under another hit, Admiral Keth understood that he wasn't just losing a battle. He was witnessing the beginning of his empire's end. The Empire's fall news of the attacks spread through the Corvani Empire like wildfire. On the capital world of Corvin Prime, Emperor Vex received reports that made his blood turn cold. "How many fleets have we lost?" he demanded from his war council. General Mock, his oldest military advisor, looked at the data with disbelief. 12 major fleets destroyed completely, 8 more badly damaged. And the attacks are still continuing. "This is impossible," the Emperor said. "The humans are dead. We made sure of that." But the evidence was clear. Across the galaxy, Corvani ships were dying. The mysterious attacks all followed the same pattern. Human weapons would appear from hiding places, strike with deadly accuracy, and vanish back into space. What made it worse was how the weapons fought. They seemed to know exactly where each Corvani ship would be, what tactics the commanders would use, even what emergency procedures they would follow. It was as if the humans had been watching and learning for decades. Meanwhile, on Admiral Keth's flagship, the situation grew desperate. Half his fleet was gone, and more ships died every minute. "Sir, we need to retreat," Commander Rix urged. "We can't win this fight." But Admiral Keth had been studying the enemy's attack patterns. "No," he said slowly. "Look at how they fight. They don't just attack randomly. They're hurting us." Vox checked his scanners and confirmed the Admiral's suspicion. "He's right, sir. Every time we try to escape in one direction, more weapons appear to block us. They're pushing us toward something." What they didn't know was that the humans had planned for this too. The weapons weren't just trying to destroy the Corvani fleet. They were driving them toward the biggest trap of all. Deep in space, hidden behind a small moon, waited the humans' final surprise. It looked like a normal asteroid, dark and lifeless. But inside its rocky shell was the most powerful weapon humanity had ever built. The humans had called it the goodbye gift. For 30 years, this weapon had been gathering energy from the nearby star. Solar collectors disguised as space dust had been feeding power into massive storage systems. Now it held enough energy to destroy an entire star system. As the surviving Corvani ships were pushed closer to the hidden weapon. Systems inside the fake asteroid came online. Targeting computers that had waited decades for this moment began calculating firing solutions. Back on Corvin Prime, Emperor Thex was receiving even worse news. "Sir," reported his intelligence chief, "we found something. Our deep space monitors have detected massive energy readings near Admiral Keth's location." "What kind of energy readings?" "The kind that comes right before a star goes supernova." The Emperor's face went pale. "That's impossible. That star is stable. It shouldn't explode for millions of years." But the readings continued to climb. Whatever the humans had built, it was preparing to release unimaginable amounts of energy. Admiral Keth saw it first. A new star seemed to be born in the darkness, growing brighter by the second. But this wasn't a natural star. This was something far more dangerous. "All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace," he ordered. "Now!" But it was too late. The goodbye gift had finished charging. The weapon fired with the power of a dying star. A beam of pure energy reached out across space, touching each Corvani ship. In seconds, Admiral Keth's entire fleet simply vanished, turned into atomic particles, and scattered to the solar winds. The energy beam didn't stop there. It reached beyond the immediate battle zone, seeking out other Corvani ships throughout the sector. Every vessel within a dozen star systems died in the same instant. On Corvon Prime, the Emperor watched his empire crumble in real time. Reports came in from across the galaxy. The human weapons weren't just attacking military targets anymore. They had found Corvani colony worlds, supply stations, and command centers. How did they know? He asked his advisors. How did they know where everything was? The answer was simple, though the Corvani would never understand it. The humans had been very good listeners. During their war with the Empire, they had captured and studied Corvani communication systems. They had learned to decode military frequencies and track fleet movements. And when they knew Earth was doomed, they had used this knowledge to map the entire Corvani Empire. Every important base, every supply route, every weakness had been recorded and stored in their hidden weapons network. Now, 50 years later, that information was being used to tear the Empire apart from within. Emperor Thex realized with growing horror that his mighty empire, which had ruled the galaxy for centuries, was dying. The humans had reached out from their graves to drag their killers into the darkness with them, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The last gift 1 year later, the Corvani Empire was gone. The human weapons had done their work with cold efficiency. Every major fleet had been destroyed. Every important base had been reduced to floating debris. The proud species that had conquered the galaxy now existed only on scattered colony worlds, their military might broken forever. In the ruins of what had once been the Empire's greatest shipyard, a single Corvani survivor, named Tech, searched through the wreckage. He had been a junior engineer before the attacks began. Now he was one of the few who understood what had really happened. The old human space station still floated in the void where Admiral Keth had first found it. But now Tech could see it for what it truly was. The rust had fallen away, revealing sleek metal underneath. The damage had been repaired by internal systems. It looked like what it had always been, a masterpiece of human engineering. Tech's small ship docked with the station. He had spent months learning human languages from captured databases. He needed to understand why his people had died. Inside the station, everything was clean and bright. Corridors that had seemed broken now hummed with power. Computer screens showed data in the flowing script of human writing. In the central chamber, Tech found what he was looking for. A large screen displayed a message in simple Galactic standard. To whoever finds this record, we are humanity. You killed our world, But you could not kill our memory. This station and others, like it were built to carry out justice for our people. If you are seeing this message, it means our plan worked. The Corvani Empire is no more. The message continued. We do not celebrate the deaths we have caused. War is always tragedy. But you gave us no choice. You would not accept peace. You would not allow other species to exist. So we prepared this final lesson in the cost of genocide. Tech found more records as he explored the station. Technical documents showed how the humans had built their network of hidden weapons. Historical files explained their strategy and planning. Personal logs from human engineers revealed their feelings as they worked on the project. One log entry, recorded by someone called Director Hall, stood out. Today we received confirmation that Earth's defenses have failed. The Corvani fleet will reach our planet within the week. But our work here is complete. The network is online. The weapons are in position. If humanity must die, we will not die alone. And perhaps our sacrifice will save other species from the same fate. As Tech read these records, he began to understand something important. The humans hadn't built their trap out of simple hatred. They had built it to protect the galaxy from the Corvani Empire's endless hunger for conquest. In the station's final chamber, Tech found one last surprise. Thousands of data pods containing everything humanity had ever learned. Their science, their art, their history, their dreams. All preserved for whoever might find them. A final message accompanied the data. To the species who survive our war, learn from our mistakes and the Corvanis. The galaxy is big enough for everyone if we choose to share it. These records contain humanity's gift to the future, all our knowledge freely given. Use it to build something better than what came before. Tech spent days studying the human records. He learned about their literature and music. He discovered their scientific achievements and philosophical ideas. He found records of human kindness and creativity that the Corvani propaganda had never mentioned. Most importantly, he found plans for a different kind of future. The humans had not just prepared weapons of war. They had also designed systems for peace, technologies that could feed entire worlds, methods for cleaning polluted planets, ideas for governments that would protect all species equally. When Tech finally left the station, he carried copies of everything he had found. Across the galaxy, other survivors were making similar discoveries. The human network had preserved more than just weapons. It had saved the knowledge needed to rebuild civilization. In the years that followed, the scattered peoples of the galaxy slowly came together. The species that had been enslaved by the Corvani were free to develop their own cultures again. New alliances formed based on cooperation instead of conquest. The old human space station became a symbol of this new age. Ships from dozens of worlds would stop to visit it, paying respect to the species that had sacrificed everything to break the cycle of endless war. And sometimes, when young beings asked their elders about the lessons of history, they would be told about humanity, a small species that had taught the galaxy's greatest empire that sunk costs are too high to pay. The humans were gone, but their final gift lived on. A galaxy where all species could exist in peace, purchased with the price of their own extinction. The end asterisk.